We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara in Meseches Gitin. This is Gittin Daf 50b. The Gemara says the halach is Yisomim Sha'amru. When we talk about Yisomim, Gedolim, that's even if they are adult Yisomim. Ve'in Tzarech Lomer Katanim, we don't even need to say if they're minors. We apply the leniency whether they are minors or the adults. Bein L'Shvua, whether we're talking about the fact that you have to take an oath to collect from the Yisomim. Bein L'Ziboris, whether we're talking about the fact that when you collect from the Yisomim, you have to collect from the worst of the property. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Ein Nifroin min we don't collect from the chasim meshubadim if the person who owes the debt has bnei chorin, he has free property. We don't collect from property with a lien. We don't collect from the lekuchos. And the Gemara says, Rav Achtavoy Barami asks, what about if there wouldn't be lekuchos, they didn't purchase the nechasim meshubadim, but they were given as a gift the nechasim meshubadim. So in that case, can you collect from the nechasim meshubadim, but even if there are bnei chorin, even if there is free property? And the Gemara explains the question. Takanta hu davar rabbanan mishum seida de lekuchos. On the one hand, you can say that this is a takana the rabbanan made on behalf of the lekuchos, because otherwise they're going to lose money. In this situation, they spent money on the property, and now the creditor is going to take it away from them. So if there's free property, you don't take away the nechasim meshubadim. Aval matana, but when it comes to a gift, so the person who received the gift isn't losing anything. The lekap seida de lekuchos, there is no loss to the buyer in that case, because he just received it as a gift. So then we don't apply this halacha. We don't say that you can't collect from nechasim meshubadim if there is nechasim b'nei chorin. Or dilmor, maybe matana nami, when it comes to a gift also, ilav de isle hanam minei, if not for the fact that he was getting some kind of benefit from him, lo yoiv le matana, he wouldn't give him a gift. No one gives a gift completely for no reason. There must have been something that he received from that individual. V'hilkach kipseida de lekuchos dami, and therefore it's the equivalent of a loss of a buyer, because even someone who receives a gift is in a sense a buyer as well. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Mar Kashisha bereder Rav Chisda Rav Ashi. Mar Kashisha, the son of Rav Chisda, said to Rav Ashi, Tashma, come in here a proof from the following Tosefta. Shchiv meira sha'amar, if a shchiv meira, somebody who is on his deathbed, he says, Tanu masayim zuz leploni, give 200 zuz to so-and-so. V'gimel meos leploni, give 300 zuz to so-and-so. V'dalid meos leploni, and 400 zuz to so-and-so. Ein omrim kol hakodem b'shtar zacha. We don't say that anybody who is listed first in the shtar, so to speak, who was mentioned first, in this case, the 200 zuz individual was mentioned first. We don't say that he has precedence. Lefikach, therefore, yotza olav shtar chov. If later there's a shtar chov against the shchiv meira, and now there are creditors, there's a creditor that's collecting from the property of the shchiv meira, gova mikula, and he collects equally from all of these individuals. There's no one that's considered to have received his money first before the other one. It's all at the same time. Avol im amar tenu masayim zuz leploni ve'acharav leploni. But if he says give 200 zuz to so and so, and after that give 300 zuz to so and so, and after that give 400 zuz to so and so, so it's clear that the shchiv meira was giving in a certain order. So then omrim, then we say kol hakodem b'shtar zacha, whoever was mentioned first is the one that gets precedence. Lefikach, therefore, in that case, yatza olav shtar chov. If there's a creditor, if there's a document against him, someone is collecting from the property of the shchiv meira, govim mino achron. First you collect from the person who received the gift last. Ein lo govim mishalafanav. If he doesn't have, then you collect from the one before him. Ein lo, and if he doesn't have, govim mishalafnei panav, you collect from the first individual. And the Gemara now explains its proof. V'yafa gav dekama beinanis uvasra ziboris. Now, even though the person who received first had average property, and the last person he received the lowest level property, still miziboris gavi mi beinanis lo gavi. You collect from the ziboris and not from the beinanis. And shmami na. So we see from here b'matana nami avud rabbanan takanta, that even by a gift the rabbanan make the same takana. Meaning over here, essentially the person who received it last. So that's the equivalent of free property when compared to the people that received the gift earlier. So if that's the case, we're saying that you collect from free property and not from the property with a lien. You always start with the person who collected last. Now we're making this takana here, even though these are all cases of gifts. This is not a situation where anyone bought anything. And so you see, even by a gift, we say this rule as well, that first you collect from the chasim b'nei chorin, and then you collect from the chasim meshubadim. And the Gemara says, no, hacha b'mayaskinon, here what are we talking about? Bebal chov, it's not a gift over here. What actually was happening over here was the shchiv meira was saying to pay back 200 zuz to so-and-so, pay back 300 zuz to so-and-so. That was the case over here, and so therefore they weren't receiving a gift. So if they weren't receiving a gift, then we would apply the laws of precedence. But the Gemara says v'atnu kamer, but he says give. It doesn't give. Doesn't the Tosefta sound like it's talking about a gift? And the Gemara says not necessarily. Tenu b'chovi. It just means give because I'm obligated. There's a debt that I have, so give to these people. And then again, some earlier creditor comes and he's collecting, and he has to collect in the proper order. But the Gemara says v'lichsi shtara deman kadim. But what's the difference in terms of who he pays back first? Why don't we see which creditor takes precedence? Meaning which one of these three creditors was owed the money first, and that's the order that you should determine. It shouldn't go by what the Shchimera said who to pay back first. It should go by who actually in their original document who actually was owed the money first by the Shchimera. And the Gemara says to that the leka shtara. No, there is no star. We can't determine it based on that. So the only way we can determine it is by who the Shchimera said to pay back first, second, third, etc. But the Gemara says, but it says whoever was first in the shtar, so doesn't that mean there was a shtar? And the Gemara says to that, no, b'shtar pekadata. What we mean is the shtar again, in terms of the will, in terms of the distribution of the property, who came first, but there is no shtar in terms of who actually was owed the money first. As Rashi says, it was a milval peh, it was just a loan without a document. And the Gemara continues, if you want, I could say, afilu matana nami, that the halacha applies even by gifts. We do say that you have to collect from the free property before the nechasim mishubadim, even by a gift. V'lo kashin, it's not difficult. My govim in achron, because what does it mean in the Tosefta when it says he collects from the last one? It means ein nifsad el achron. What it means is the only person that's going to lose out is the last one. And Rashi explains, if you want, I can answer as follows: Liola mikama beinanis uvasrav ziboris. Really, if the earlier person had average property and the later one had ziborius, we would say mikama gavi. You would collect from the earlier one. The shakel dine, because he takes according to the law. He's owed beinanis and not ziboris. V'lo amar b'matana ein nefram min nechasim mishubadim b'makom sheyesh b'nei chorn. And we don't say when it comes to a gift that you can't collect from the nechasim mishubadim if there's free property. You absolutely are allowed to buy a gift, and he would actually take the beinanis. So my govim in achron. Now, if that's true, what does it mean when the Tosefta says he govim in achron? He collects from the last person. It's not true. If the earlier person had beinanis, he would collect from the earlier person. And so Rashi explains what that means is, as the Gemara said, eino nifsad ela achron. It means that the last person ultimately will be the only one to lose out. Because even if you collect from the earlier person the beinanis, choser ala achron, that person can go to the later one, the gova mimenu, and collect from him. Because he can say to him, you shouldn't have collected from the earlier one. And so what it means is ultimately only the final person to receive anything from the shchimera, that person will have no one to go back to, he'll have no one to collect from, and he ultimately will be the only one to lose out. And finally, the Gemara answers, if you want, I could say a final answer, Deshavu Kulu Hadadi, that the case over here in the Tosefta is that all the property is equal. It's not a situation where you have some Ziborius and some Beinanis, etc. And Rashi explains, if you want, I could say, Dafka govim in achron ka'amar. Really, the Tosefta does mean that you only collect from the last person. But still, you can't say from this Tosefta that the halach of ein nifran applies even in a situation of gifts. Because here, what is the case? The shavu kulu karko, so kulan beinanis, so kulan ziboris, because all the lands are equal. They're all beinanis, they're all ziborius, so kulan edgis, or they're all edgis. And therefore, since they're all equal, of course, you're only going to collect from the last person. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "Ein motzian la'achilas peiros." You're not allowed to take from the chasim mishubadim when it comes to the peiros. And the Gemara will explain this, and Rashi will explain. The Gemara says, "My time." And what is the reason for this? Amar Ula says, Amar Reish Lakish, that Reish Lakish says, Lefisha ein ksuvin. The reason is that this wasn't written into the shtar. You can only collect from the chasim mishubadim things that are written into the shtar. And Rashi explains, Lefisha ein ksuvin, because it's not written into the shtar, meaning as follows. HaPeiros halola, when it comes to the fruits, Kishenichtav shtar mechiras hakarka hagzula. There was a shtar here that was written because land was sold, and it turned out later on that the land that was sold was actually stolen land. And so the person who was stolen from takes it back from the buyer. And now the buyer, he has a shtar that was written with achrayas, and the buyer wants to get paid back. And the idea is that the buyer then goes even to the nechasim mishubadim of the seller, but he's not able to go to the nechasim mishubadim of the seller to collect for any fruits that he grew on the land, because that wasn't written in there. The peiros weren't written in there. Adayin lohayu, they weren't even in existence at the time of the sale. V'lo kasav b'shtar, the fruits weren't written into the shtar. What was written into the shtar was ela ploni machar karka plonis leploni b'achrayas. It just said so and so is selling this particular land to so and so, and he's taking achrayas Again, the achrayus means that the buyer, if the land ever gets taken away, it turns out was stolen or something like that, so then the buyer will be able to collect in the chasim mishubadim, but that's only on the karka. Hilkach demei ha-karka have a milva b'shtar. Therefore, the value of the land itself, that's like a milva b'shtar. Lahachzer achrayusu olav. There's achrayus there. He can collect in the chasim mishubadim. Avol demei ha-peres have a milva al-peh. But when it comes to the value of the fruits, that's like an oral loan. That's like a milva al-peh. V'lo tarvi mi-meshavdi. He's not able to collect from the chasim mishubadim. And Rashi notes, "V'afagav dechasav le'ano ekom veshpi zevina yilein inon v'amalein v'shivchein upiri didon ahani lechiyuve b'achriyusa." Even though it seems to say the fruits also are part of the shtar, they're written in there that he's going to collect. V'ligvi mi b'nei chori avol mi-meshavdi lo. What's written there just means that he can collect for the peiros from free property, but it doesn't mean that he can collect even from the chasim mishubadim. The time of the milva b'shtar tar from mi-meshavdi mishum de islay kala, because the reason why by a milva b'shtar you can collect from property with a lien on it is because the word goes out, everybody knows about it, they know there's a lien on this individual's properties. But in terms of the fruits, people are not aware. When it comes to land, everybody knows so-and-so sold land to so-and-so, and there's achrayus over here, there's a lien on his property. But on the fruits which don't even exist at the time of the sale, the word does not go out, and therefore we say when it comes to the fruits, you're not able to collect from the chasim mishubadim. That's the opinion of Ula. Amar le Rabbi Abba le'Ula. So Rabbi Abba said to Ula, "V'hamazon ha'isha v'habanas." What about the sustenance for a person's wife and daughters? T'chaman d'chsivi damu. That's written. It's as if it's written into the ksuba. V'katani ein motziin. And when it comes to the sustenance of his wife and daughters as well, we say you're not allowed to collect. They're not allowed to collect from the chasim mishubadim. And Rashi explains, "Command dechsivi dami detnai bezinu." That's a condition of bezin. Umishanisas lo kol yotzei shu meshubed. Everyone knows when the marriage takes place, the word goes out that the husband is obligated. He's meshubed. Detnan lo kasav lo b'non nukvin dihavelechi minoi v'chulu v'atayasu v'vesi chayiv. Even if he doesn't write it, he's chayiv. Shu tanai bezin, because it's a condition of bezin that he's chayiv. That bechsuvas beperak nara. That's in ksubas, and so therefore that's as if it is written. That's a tanai bezin. And yet, what does it say when it comes to the mazon ha'isha? Even though it's command chsivi damu v'katani ein motzin, it's the same halacha. He's not allowed to take from the chasim mishubadim over there. So Ula's reason, when Ula says that Reish Lakish says the reason you can't take the fruits from the chasim mishubadim, the value of the fruits from the chasim mishubadim, is because they weren't written into the shtar. So that implies that if something's written in the shtar, you could collect, but that's not true. The mazon isha v'abanos is as if it's written into the shtar, and you're not able to collect. And the Gemara answers to that. Amar Lei said to him, "Hasam over there, meikara hachayiskin." That was the takana in the first place. What was the takana? Ksuvin hein eitzel b'nei chorin, that it's only considered written down when it comes to free property. Vein ksuvin hein eitzel mishubadim, but it's not considered written down. The mazon isha v'abanos is not considered as if it's written with regards to the chasim mishubadim. You cannot collect from the chasim mishubadim in terms of the mazon ha'isha v'habanos. And Rashi explains, "Meikar l'hachayiskin Tanai Bezin." That is the Tanai Bezin. Ka'achayishu ksuvim eitzel b'nei chorin v'lo yechashuvim k'chsuvim eitzel mishubadim. It's considered written by free property, but not by nechasim mishubadim. And the reason is lafisha ein lach adam rotza likach sada mechavero im mazon ishto banav chozrim olav alamis. Nobody's ever going to buy a field from his friend if he knows that he is now obligated. There's a lien on this guy's property for all the sustenance of his wife and his daughters. No one's going to do that. They're not going to want to buy any property because they're going to think that forever this property, there's a lien on it to support the wife and the daughters. And the Gemara continues, V'chein amar Rabbi Yasi amar Rabbi Yochanan. Similarly, Rabbi Yasi says that Rabbi Yochanan says, L'fi she'en ksuvin, the reason why you don't collect from the chasim mishubadim by the fruits is because they weren't written into the shtar, just like the reason we gave that Ula said, that Reish Lakish said. Amar le Rabbi Zeir, Rabbi Yasi, Rabbi Zeir said to Rabbi Asi the same question, V'hamazon isha v'abonos techman d'chsivi damo v'katani ein motziin. But what about the sustenance of the wife and the daughters? That's as if it's written into the shtar, and still we say you can't take from the chasim mishubadim. And the Gemara has the same answer. Amar le said to him, Meikara hachiyiskin, originally that is the takana. Ksuvin hein eitzel b'nei chorin is considered written when it comes to free property. Vein ksuvin hein eitzel mishubadim. It's not considered written when it comes to nechasim mishubadim. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Chanina says, Lafisha ein ksuvin. He says a different reason. The reason why by the fruits you can't collect from the nechasim mishubadim is because it's not a set amount. Nobody knows how much fruit there is, and therefore you can't go over to the lochim, to those who purchased the property had a lien on it. You can't go collect that property for the fruits because there's no clear idea of how much value those fruits would have. And the Gemara says, they asked the following question. According to Rabbi Chanina, in order to collect from Nechasim Meshubarim, do you require both that it's a set amount and that it's written into the shtar? Or maybe you don't require both, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Aleph Amud Aleph.